Well, good morning again, Active Church. How are you doing this morning? Great. It is great to be with you. My name is Mike. I'm one of the pastors here, and we are in week 2 of a series called The God I Wish You Knew. Because a lot of us have this perspective of God that may not be healthy, it may not be good. We may see him as angry or as awful or as distant. Maybe some of us see God sitting on his throne like an old man with a long beard, with a lightning bolt ready to get us in trouble. And I think a lot of us may have that perspective, and then we see God's people doing things and saying things that would make us say, I just don't want to believe in a God like that. And we would respond, neither do we. And that's why we want to tell you about the God I wish you knew. Because this God is the God of the Bible. His name is Jesus. And this God is personal. He's not sitting on a throne ready to get you in trouble. This God cares about you. This God gave his life for you. This God resurrected for you. And this God loves you. And I know that maybe for some of us, when we think about God being personal, we just wouldn't put God and personal together in the same sentence. It seems odd. It almost seems like, oil and water, right? They just don't mix. God being personal, it just doesn't mix. Or maybe if that analogy doesn't work for you, maybe like socks and sandals. It just doesn't mix. Any violators of the socks and sandals rule in here? I just have 2 words for you. Stop it. Maybe that analogy doesn't work for you. How about pineapple and pizza? It just doesn't work. Now I just want you to know, it feels like the House of Congress here and for a moment. Like, half of you are like, yeah, that's right. And half of you are like, boo, I got booed in church, people. Maybe that analogy doesn't work for you. Maybe millennials and hard work. They just don't go together. Now, for the record, a millennial told me that and gave me permission to share that with you, and all of the plus 40 crowd was like, yes, yes! And I think I might have got a few middle fingers in church. I don't know if I did or not, and just so that everybody is equally offended, how about it doesn't go together like, old people and fast moving? The idea of a personal God is so foreign, and yet when you see Jesus, it becomes so real. Jesus came to this earth fully God, fully human. And he would sit around tables with people. He would spend time with people. He would love people. He would extend hands to people, show mercy to people, get close and intimate with people. And I think really what the question that we're asking when it comes to God being personal, what's really stirring in us is really the question of, does God really care about me? Because we have a lot of relationships in our lives, don't we, that we're not sure if they care about us. We're not sure if they're in our lives because of what they can get from us. And often we're having to navigate that. And then when we think we've found a relationship where we know the answer to this question is yes, isn't it so life-giving? Doesn't it feel like you can take a breath again? And when it comes to a relationship with God, when it comes to knowing God and describing God, I think most of us would say, I have to try to figure out all of these relationships. I don't want to have to figure out that one. I just want to know, does God really care about me? And wouldn't it be great if we could just go, well, yes. But you know that that's not emotionally satisfying, is it? That doesn't settle the tension in your heart. And so how do we figure this out? What steps do we take to try to figure that out? I think what we would do with God is what we would do with people, right? We would engage with people and we would learn about people and we would listen to what they say and we would watch what they do. Because what comes out of their mouth is a reflection of what's happening inside of them, and what they do is a reflection of how serious they take their own words. Jesus actually taught that. He said, when you're listening to somebody, you're listening to their heart. In fact, one of the verses that is in Matthew, he writes this: For out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. What's going on inside of me is eventually going to come out. What is in my heart will eventually come out of my mouth. And so you can listen to my words because that'll give you an idea of what I'm about. But not only can you listen to my words, you can watch what I do. The writer in Proverbs says this: as the water reflects a face, so a man's heart reflects a man. And so what Jesus is saying here is you can watch what somebody says and does, and that will tell you all about who they are. Because your heart reveals your character. It's a part of your character. It lets people know what you're like, what you do, and what's inside of you. And when it comes to God, we can do those same things. We can watch God, and we can listen to God. And then we can evaluate what we've watched and what we've listened to. I want to take you to a moment in the life of Jesus where he's spending some time with people, and their question is really, does God really care about me? I really want to know that. Does God really care about me? I really want to feel that. Does God really care about me? I want to have a sense in my life that he does. And so Jesus begins to answer that question with 3 parables. These are true stories. These are true stories that Jesus is telling. They have true principles in them, and he's telling these stories, and he uses the characters in the stories to reflect God, to reflect religious people, and to reflect people that are non-religious. And so the people that are listening to these stories can lean in and try to figure out who they are in the story. But Jesus, in these next 3 stories, is wanting us to know about God. And so he begins by telling the first story this way. Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he not leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? Now, I don't remember the last time that I was a shepherd in the field, and I don't know the last time that you were as well. I mean, I know that most of us live in Yucaipa, but I don't remember the last time that we were caring for sheep in an open field. The last time I dressed up as a shepherd was Halloween at a Christian school, because it wasn't Halloween, it was Bible character dress-up day. But what he's telling us here is that the shepherd has 100 sheep. They're in an open country, and one of them is missing. And he leaves the 99 to find the one. Now, what you need to know about sheep is that sheep are stupid. Sheep are not smart. They could turn around and not know where they're at. And so they need a shepherd to guide and direct them. And so what this shepherd does is he says, there's strength in numbers. I'm going to leave 99 together in the open field, because the one that is lost needs me more. And I am going to go find the one that is lost. And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. What an image. What strength. The shepherd grabs the sheep and puts it over his shoulders and walks home. What a perfect image of a good dad or a good mom, or a good friend scooping up somebody and saying, I've got you. I'm bringing you back home to where it's safe. In the very next verse, Jesus says this: then he calls his friends and his neighbors together and says, rejoice with me. I have found my sheep. I have found my sheep. Let's have a celebratory moment, because what was lost is now found. And these stories, particularly this story, would be really familiar with people who were spending time with Jesus. Because Jesus, this wasn't the first time that he talked about a shepherd and sheep. One of the writers, named John, spent a lot of time with Jesus, records one of the moments where he's talking about shepherds and sheep, and he says this: my sheep listen to my voice. I know them, and they follow me. Jesus says, I'm like a shepherd, and you're like sheep. And we have such an intimate relationship. I am so personal that I know you, and you follow me, and you listen to my voice. Are there people in your life that when they show up into the room and they start speaking, you immediately know that they're there? Because of the sound of their voice or the volume of their voice or the twang in their voice? Yesterday, I was with somebody that had a southern accent. They were from Arkansas. My grandma and my grandpa are from Arkansas. And as they were talking, I went back to 5 and 6 years old. It was as if my grandpa and my grandma were in the room. I started thinking about sweet tea. I started thinking about watermelon with salt on it. Started thinking about like pinto beans. These are all the things that came up in my mind because this represented my family. I immediately thought of my nana and my papa. And maybe there's somebody in your life that when they show up, you hear their voice, you hear their laugh, and you immediately go, where are they? Because I want to see them. Jesus says, my sheep listen to my voice. They know my voice. And I know them. And they follow me. We're together. We're in relationship. This first story that Jesus is sharing, what he wants us to know is God is like a shepherd who searches for his sheep because each one matters. He doesn't say, I got 99, one is lost, no big. He says, I had 100, one is gone. I'm going to go find the one that's gone. And we can kind of summarize this story this way. Something was lost, and it needed to be found. Something was lost, and it needed to be found. Hang on to that as we go to the next story. Jesus just moves right into this next story. And he says this, suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Does she not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? I think everybody in the room can relate to this, where you've lost something. Maybe for you, it was a lost set of keys. And you have that moment where you go, oh dear, and you start doing the Macarena, right? And then what you do is you start frantically looking in the house, and it's never convenient, right? It's always about 30 to 50 seconds before you actually have to be somewhere. And you start frantically looking in the house. And as you're frantically looking, tearing up things, everybody else that's in the house with you, they ask, what's going on? And you know you don't have time to tell them what's going on because you want to find your keys or your phone or whatever it is that you've lost. And at some point, they keep asking those questions, and you respond in an irritated way, I've lost my keys. And then they ask the most genius question that has ever been asked in moments like this. When do you remember having them last? And in those moments, don't you want to go, if I knew that, I would have looked there, I would have been there, you dumb, dumb, dumb person. Because when you're looking frantically for something, your mind is on that. You have to find it. And Jesus says that this woman has this beautiful gold necklace, 10 coins on it, and there's a piece of it that's gone, and she's trying to frantically find it. And then when she finds it, she calls her friends and says, I found it. And what Jesus wants us to know is God is like a person who searches for what is most valuable to him. His sheep, each one matters. He's like a shepherd. What's valuable to him will be something that he will always go and try to find. And then Jesus doesn't even take a breath. He wants us to know in this story that something was lost and needed to be found. And all the people that are listening are probably going, he's building to something. What is he building to? He's telling us something. What is he telling us? And Jesus moves into his third story. And the third story is about a father who has two sons, older son, younger son. And there's a moment in this story where the younger son comes to the dad, to the father, and he says, I want my inheritance. I want to go live on my own. I'm tired of living under your rule. I'm tired of living in your house. I'm tired of being here. And so I want to go do what I want to do. Now you need to know, in the Jewish culture, the older son has all the inheritance. He would be given in charge of the family once mom and dad would pass away. He would be given all of their land, all of their money once mom and dad passed away. And then it was believed that he would be giving some sort of special blessing. And the writers of the Bible don't necessarily describe that. They just talk about a special blessing. And then he would divvy up all of the inheritance to the rest of the family once mom and dad pass away. And so for the younger brother to come to his dad and to say, I want my inheritance now, he's saying to his father, I wish you were dead. And I want everything that is owed to me when you're dead, I want it right now. And it says the father's response is to give him what he asks for. And the son leaves. And he goes into the city. And he spends all of his money. And he has a lot of friends during that time. But when the money runs out, he runs out. And the friends run out. And he finds himself isolated and lonely, looking for a job. And he's a good Jewish boy. And he finds a job feeding pigs. And if you're familiar with Jewish customs, that is not a good thing to even be near pigs. And yet he finds himself feeding pigs. He is so hungry that he actually wants to eat what the pigs are eating. And then he has a moment where he begins to realize, this is not so much fun. I could go back and be a servant for my father. I could make a decent wage. I could have 3 good meals a day, and I could just serve my dad as a servant. I could clean toilets. I just want to go back to my dad. And so he does what all of us would do. As he begins to make the decision to go back, he's building up the courage to go back. He starts with his speech. Have you ever talked to a person but not talk to them first? You talk to yourself in front of the mirror or in your head, all of the things that you're going to say before you actually say it to the person. You even have comebacks for what you think that they're going to say, and you're like, oh, that's good, I'm writing that one down. This is what this young man is doing. He's walking home and he's going, okay, Dad, I'm sorry I've sinned against you. I hope you can forgive me. No, I don't want that. Dad, I beg for your mercy. Would you allow me to be here? No, I don't want that. He's probably processing all of this stuff because he knows he's done wrong. I've spit in my father's face. I wished he was dead. And what do you say to your father in those moments? How heartbreaking that must have been. And so finally he gets his speech in his mind, all rehearsed. And he's getting to the edge of the town. And he sees his house. And you know the anxiety is probably building in him. And you know the nervousness is probably taking over. I don't know about you, but when I get anxious or when I get nervous, I shake. I might be able to be calm in my voice, but my hands, they just shake. And I hate those moments. I almost have to sit on my hands. And maybe for him, he's just shaking as he gets closer and closer to Dad's house. And then Jesus says this, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and grabbed the list of all the ways that he's going to be grounded and grabbed all of the work that he's going to have to do and all the things that he wanted him to apologize for. Is that what it says? He was filled with compassion for him. He spit in his face. He wished he was dead. And the father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. Two of my favorite words in the Bible. He ran. You want to know why he ran? Because in that Jewish culture, if you dishonored your father the way that this young man did, as soon as you showed up back in town, they could put you on trial and they could kill you. They could arrest you and kill you. And all of the people that are listening to this story would know that. And so as Jesus is telling this story and he's building to the crescendo of the story, you know most of them in the crowd are going, if that guy comes back, he's going to be in a lot of trouble. He could lose his life. What's the father going to do? And when Jesus says that the father saw him, everybody probably went, oh, trouble's coming. Here comes daddy. When I was growing up, we had a wooden paddle on top of our refrigerator. Honest to God, I think I got paddled once. Because every time I got in trouble, all my dad needed to do was turn his head and make eye contact with the paddle. And I was like, I am so sorry. Now, my older brother and my middle brother, they got swatted a lot. In fact, there was one time where my older brother put on 6 pairs of underwear because they were in trouble a lot, and we still pray for their souls. You know that this is what these people are thinking. Uh-oh, daddy saw you. Daddy's coming. Wait till your father gets home. And instead of being angry, he's filled with compassion and he runs to his son and he threw his arms around him and he kissed him. And what Jesus wants us to know is that God is like a father who loves his son more than he loves his rules. God is like a shepherd, and every one of his sheep matter to him. God is like a person who has lost something valuable and he searches high and low for it. And God is like a father who loves his son more than he loves his rules. And maybe the image of a father is not something that is great in your mind. And Jesus says, let me tell you about God. Let him change the perspective of a father in your mind, because he is like a dad who loves his son more than he loves his rules. And again, something was lost and needed to be found. And then Jesus finishes his stories. And we listen to those stories. And what we learn is that God is greater than our highs and lows. And so great is he that he will leave 99 to find the one. And so great is he as he will leave the 9 coins to find the one. And so great is he as he will run to the son that spit in his face. God will move heaven and earth to get to you. And maybe a personal God is something that you just have a tough time grabbing a hold of. And what Jesus would want you to know is that he represents God on earth. He went to the cross for you and for me. And there is nothing that will get in the way of God finding you and embracing you because he loves you. He is not a distant God. He is a personal God. As a young father, when my kids were younger, my oldest was 6, we went to SeaWorld San Diego because that was the only amusement park as a young family that we could afford without selling a kidney. Abby was 6, Gavin was 3, and Riley was just born. And my wife was at that place where I could tell that if we kept going, she was gonna knock some heads. Moms, y'all been there? Husbands, have you seen wives that have been there? And you know, as husbands, we're stupid, but we have good moments where we have this sense like, she needs a break. And so I said to her, honey, why don't you grab a coffee? I'll take the kids over to this play area. We're going to have a fantastic time, and you can sit and you can breathe and you can relax. So I have Riley in the stroller. I have Gavin holding my hand, and I have Abby a couple of steps ahead of me. And we come to this structure. Yeah. Because you see this massive structure, and as a kid, this becomes heaven on earth for Abby. And Gavin, because Abby wants to do it, Gavin gets excited about it too. So Abby says, Daddy, could I go climb in that? Sure, I'm a fun dad. You go climb in that. Gavin says, and at the time he had this really cute lisp. He was like, Dad, could I go climb in that too? And I said, yeah, buddy, you can go climb in that. And I knew he wouldn't be able to get up the rope climb. I knew he would have to struggle a little bit. No big deal. Riley's still in the stroller, and I realized that as Gavin is climbing, he's going to need Dad's help. So I thought, you know what I'll do? I'm going to take Riley over to Mom and just let her sit there because she was now falling asleep, and I'll play with Gavin a little bit. So I look at Gavin, I look at Abby, I've got them located, I take my youngest, I put her over by Tiff, which was just a few steps away. I come back, I see Gavin, and I look up, and Abby is gone. In this. And this is for little kids. It's not for grown men. And I figured that out when I started to think through, where is my daughter and how will I find her? And so I went like this, and I went like that, and then my heart started racing. And I got a little bit more nervous, and I started to shake. And I started calling out, Abby! Abby! And obviously there's kids yelling and screaming and having fun in this thing. And so I'm like, I have to do something about this. But I can't leave my boy just sitting on these steps on this rope climb thing. So I need to take Gavin over to Tiff. And I realize that And I realize that in that moment, that what you just thought is what I'm gonna have to do. I have to take Gavin over to Tiff, and I have to, in some point, explain to her why I'm bringing Gavin back, but I know that I don't have enough time to explain it because I've lost my daughter, but I don't want her to know that because I enjoy being married to her, and I don't want a divorce to happen, and so I have to bring him over, drop him off really quick, and then come back. All of this is happening in like 2.5 seconds. So I grab Gavin, I bring him over, and I said, will you watch him for a moment? I'm going to get Abby. She goes, what do you mean you're going to get Abby? And I said, I love you. I'll be back. And I just took off. I go climbing up the rope. Guys, 30 seconds into this thing, I'm hyperventilating because I'm completely out of shape and I'm completely freaked out and I'm looking for Abby. I go inside some of these tubes. And remember, it's not built for me. It's built for little kids. So I get feet in my face. It smells disgusting in there. I put my hand in. What was that? And so I'm climbing through, trying to move kids out of the way. All of the adults are watching this freak climb through this thing. And I'm going through, calling her name, Abby, Abby. I'm jumping around. I'm moving this way. I'm climbing up this thing. And I get to a place where there's this fireman pole. And I haven't done that since I was second grade. So I was like, ooh, oh wait, I'm still looking for my kid. And so I get on the fireman pole and I go all the way down. And I land and I still haven't found her. And then I turn to the left. And here is this beautiful 6-year-old. Who was just about to realize that she was lost. And then she saw her dad. And I'll never forget what she said to me. Hands go up. And she says, oh, Daddy, you found me. Oh. And when I think about these stories, and I think about how personal God is, that answered the question for me when I read this about Jesus. That he cares for me, and he cares for you, and he will stop at nothing to get to you and to get to me. One writer his name is Paul, he described it this way in a letter called Colossians. You were dead in your sin, and your sinful desires were not cut away. They were still a part of you. Then he gave you a share of the very life of Christ, for he forgave all your sins, and he blotted out all the charges proved against you. Like big Sharpie, just blotting it out. The things that were proved against you. The things that you would say, yeah, I did that. Yes, honey, I lost our kid, but I found her. And he blotted out those charges. The list of his commandments which you and I had not obeyed. And he took this list of sins and destroyed it by nailing it to Christ's cross. God is personal because he took our sin personally. God is personal because he took our sin personally. He didn't ask for us to pay for it. He didn't ask for us to jump through hoops. He runs to us and is filled with compassion, and he says to us, it's all going to be okay. Dad's here. I found you, and I'm going to take care of this. And we listen to these words of Jesus, and we go, man, he must really care about me. Man, he must really love me. We don't have to try to figure out Jesus because he says, this is what God is like. But remember, we're not just listening, we're watching, right? We're not just listening to the words, we're watching to see how serious Jesus is with these words. And before Jesus even goes into these stories, there's a moment that we can skip over that this writer named Luke records. It's a simple moment. It's just a details moment, but it tells us a lot about Jesus and something that we can watch. He says this, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathering around to hear him being Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law muttered, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. In just 2 sentences, Jesus says, you want to know what I'm like? You want to know how personal God is? He's going to sit down with those that people think you shouldn't sit down with. He's going to spend time with those that people think you shouldn't spend time with. He is going to have a meal and share a meal with those that many people think you shouldn't spend time with. We are more connected. We have access to everybody in this world, and yet isn't it true that we are so lonely? Isn't it true that we lean towards isolation? Isn't it true that we lean towards being by ourselves? And here's what we need to know this morning. Your growth is dependent upon relationship. Nobody grows outside of relationship. Nothing changes outside of relationship. And Jesus knew that. And he says, you want to know how personal I am? Let me tell you 3 stories. You want to know how personal I am? Look at who I'm sitting with. And it wasn't so that he could show off. It was because that's his character. That's his heart. That's the type of God that we worship and that we love. And a lost person can only be found by someone who knows that they are lost and is looking for them. And if we are not in relationship with each other, then nobody's going to come looking for us. And God says, I made you, created you, you're my kid. You're in relationship with me whether you like it or not, whether you believe in me or not, and he is looking for you because he wants to find you. He wants to rescue you. He wants to scoop you up. It was Jesus that announced to those that would listen why he came. He said this in Luke, I have come to seek and to save what was lost. I have come to seek and to save what was lost because we know God is personal because he personally found us. And maybe that's why you were invited today. Because somebody who was found wants you to know what it's like to be found. See, when you're found, you don't go, "Oh, gee, thanks," and move on with life. When you're found, you throw hands up. You say, "Oh, Daddy, you found me." You embrace, you celebrate, you are glad that you're found. But then there's something in your heart that tells you there are probably other people that are like this. There are other people that feel this. There are other people that are lost, and they need to be found. We know that as a church, don't we? Because within 30 miles of this building right now live 2.2 million people, and 1.7 million of them do not go to church. Each church in this city could be filled to capacity, and we would not even be making a dent in those people that are lost. And so if you are somebody this morning that would announce that you are found, here's the job for you. Found people find people. It is not for us to say, "I'm a Christian, God loves me, watch me sit and do nothing." It is our calling on our life to be people who say, "I am found, and now I'm going to join the search party to move heaven and earth so that there are people who know what it's like to be lost, who are experiencing that loss, that they could be found with us." I know that there are people in your life that you would put in the lost category. Maybe you're in that category and somebody invited you, and you're moving from lost to found. Maybe today is your first day and you're moving from lost to found because you realize that God is personal, He is real, and He does care about you. When you came in today, there was a card on the chairs around you. I want to encourage you to grab that card for a moment. That card is a one card. And what we learn in this story is that Jesus prioritizes the one. Because when somebody's lost, Jesus creates a search party to find them. And the search party is you. And it is time for us to think through who it is that we would love to have sitting next to us. Who it is that we would love to be a part of the search party to find. Who it is that when you think about somebody who needs the hope that you have, who needs the love that you've experienced, who needs the God that you know, who is it? Who is your one? Who is that name, that person, that relationship? Because found people find people. And there are those that need what you have. They need to know the God that you know. They need to have a different image in their head, that He is not distant and sitting on a throne, that He is personal and cares about them. Who is your one? We're going to end this series on October 29th. And that day, our theme is God is ready to accept you. And that's the day that we hope that you have the courage and the wisdom to invite your one to come and be a part of this. To meet the one God that loves them and is personal with them and cares about them. Who is your one? Found people find people. And the God I wish you knew, He cares about you and He cares about your one. He cares about you and He cares about your one. Let me pray for you. God, as we hold this card in our hand, and as we think about the one who is lost that needs to be found, the one who is far that needs to be brought home, the one who needs to throw their hands up and say, "Oh, Daddy, you found me." God, we ask that you would give us courage to love them well, to show mercy and compassion, and to give them, extend to them what has been extended to us, and that is the hope that is found in only Jesus. So today, as we sit and we think about the one, prepare us to have a conversation. Prepare us to extend an invite. And prepare us to be a part of the search team that brings lost people home. And we ask all of these things in Jesus' name.